Tottenham 2, Liverpool 2. It's finished all square at White Hart Lane on a very controversial evening in the Premier League. Hello and welcome to the Debrief Live on the Blood Red channel with myself, Patrick Smith, and Matt Addison. Matt, how are you doing?
Yeah, slightly frustrated that I'm sure for a lot of Liverpool fans. It was a really good game actually. I think if you were a neutral and didn't have any sort of investment in either team, but yeah, I mean I'm not going to take too long with the first answer because there's just so many things for us to go through, isn't there, over the next few minutes. So yeah, I think a frustrating one. It looked at one stage like Jurgen Klopp was going to combust on the sidelines there, and yeah, it's not too difficult, I don't think, to work out why.
Yeah, I'm going to start. I hate to talk about referees. Our performance wasn't great today, and I never like to moan about the rest, but wow, it was a disgraceful performance from Paul Tierney today, Matt, wasn't it? What are your initial thoughts on his performance?
I mean, where do you even start? I think there's a number of things that he's got wrong there, and I think VAR can help him out on a few of those things. I can understand why he doesn't give the penalty on Diogo Jota, for example. I can see why that might have been missed. But I mean, we've seen a couple of them. There was one in the game a little bit earlier on where a player gets taken out. I think it's Ryan Fraser in the penalty area for Newcastle, and it's just a blatant penalty. And it was the same in this Liverpool game. Again, like yourself, I'm not one to sort of have a go at referees. I referee at a very low level compared to this myself, and I know how difficult it is. I know, you're there and you've got 22 men around you to kind of control and sort of make the big calls at the right times. But with VAR, I think you just expect some of those decisions to be gotten right. And I think that the most obvious one is obviously the difference between the Harry Kane tackle and the Andy Robertson one. I think Robertson it's a red card. It's a really stupid tackle for him to make. But the thing that I think will stick in Liverpool's throats really is the fact that Kane stayed on in the first half when it was just an inconsistent performance. And I think that is what frustrates people. It's not like it's inconsistency between, week to week, different referees in different games. It was, the same referee, the same game, the same VAR who's looking at the screen and determining these things. So yeah, it was a frustrating one. Liverpool didn't play well, but I think at certain times you expect certain decisions to help you out a little bit. And look, there were one or two that Liverpool got as well, but the vast majority of the big decisions in this game that should have gone Liverpool's way ultimately didn't.
Couldn't agree more. I think a lot of fans like me won't be angry that Robertson was sent off because it was a dangerous, silly tackle he didn't need to make. But it's the inconsistency that's so frustrating. The first tackle from Kane, horrendous challenge, Matt. It should have been a red card, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you see it straight away, and I just don't understand why he's not given the red card initially. You thought it was a really forceful tackle. It ticks every box for being a red card, but then to not get him to go over and look at the screen like he did with the one in the second half is just really strange. I mean, like I say, I have no issue with the Robertson red card. I think it's a stupid one to put in, but it's just not as bad as the Kane one. It's both of them are red cards, but one is far worse than the other, and one the referee is told to go and look at the screen, and the other one he isn't. So yeah, it's very strange. I know Harry Kane in his post-match interview said, he got the ball in the first half, which is A, not true, and B, irrelevant. So I'm not entirely sure what else he could say. To be fair to him, he kind of had to try and defend himself a little bit, but it's just indefensible. I mean, it really is very strange. It's yeah, I just can't explain it, to be honest. It's just a blatantly wrong call.
Do you think the fact that he's England captain and that it was early on has helped him out there?
Possibly the fact that it was early on in the game, but again, it shouldn't make too much of a difference. I think, yeah, it's one of those. It's hard to know what the referee is thinking. I think it's just really strange. It's really strange. It's two incidents that shouldn't really be too much different in the referee's mind. And I look, I'll be honest, I think there'll be a lot of Tottenham fans coming away from the game thinking they were hard done by a few of the decisions as well. But
yeah,
look, on the balance of it, there was far more that went the way of Liverpool, or went the way of Tottenham rather than Liverpool in terms of the big ones anyway. I think the referee just didn't really help the game at all there.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was a complete lack of control because it was such a good game, as we've said, real Christmas cracker, as they said about 10 times on Sky Sports. But it was a really good game. It's just a shame it was ruined. But another controversial decision was the Jota penalty. Now, you touched on that at the start of the show. Did you think that was, or do you think Tierney was right to not give that one?
I can see, like I say, I can see in real time why you might think it's not. It's slightly off the ball. It's possibly one where the ball has moved away anyway. He's maybe not looking exactly in that direction. I can understand that, but how on VAR they haven't decided that it's a foul. I mean, it's a blatant one again. It's such an obvious decision. He just goes straight through the back of him. No attempt to play the ball. He's just about to shoot and he gets knocked over. It's not shoulder to shoulder. It's a shoulder straight into the bottom of his back. And it's just blatant for me. It's an absolute stonewall penalty. And you're struggling to work out quite why it's not being given. But yeah, I think that there's two reasons why Liverpool didn't win this game. One is the refereeing decisions. The other is the fact that they had so many key players missing and just ultimately couldn't play to the same level. I think Tottenham will get a lot of praise because they've held Liverpool today, but yeah, there's a couple of very big mitigating factors, I think, to explain that. I still think the gap between these two is enormous. I still think Tottenham will struggle to get into the top four this season, but yeah, there's just too many things today have not gone Liverpool's way. Starting before the game, obviously, but then even within the game as well, it's just not been anywhere near what Liverpool needed it to be. And to be honest, they very nearly did win the game. Obviously, when they go a goal in front, you expect them to be able to hold on. But yeah, it was just one of those days. The fact that they've drawn and not lost, I suppose, is one thing that you can salvage from it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We could make this an extended show talking about the world-renowned English Premier League refereeing. But I'm going to move on to Liverpool's performance because we need to break that down. My man of the match, arguably, was Andy Robertson. Had a fantastic game, I thought, in spite of a disappointing overall team performance. Got a goal, got an assist, but then got himself sent off. The fullbacks were really dominant today, Matt, weren't they?
Yeah, they were excellent. I think Trent had by far and away the most touches in the first half, and it was a slightly weird game in that Mohamed Salah didn't really touch the ball, but the fullbacks saw a lot of it. Sadio Mane, I thought, saw quite a lot of it as well. So, yeah, you're right to say it was a really good performance by Robertson. I think he maybe sometimes is aggressive to a certain point and is able to just sort of control himself enough in terms of being able to not step over that line. And unfortunately, he has done today, whether he's got a little bit excited after obviously scoring the goal. It's his first goal for such a long time, a good few months since he's been on the score sheet. And I think that's actually a part of his game that, given how often he is high up the pitch and inside the penalty area, he probably should do a little bit more in terms of goal scoring and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it was a good performance up to the point of the red card, but I don't think Liverpool can really have any complaints in terms of the isolation of the incident. If you take it just as that tackle, it is a red card. There's not really too much doubt about that. So, yeah, the frustration isn't that it wasn't a red card. It's the fact that there were so many other things that went against them. But, yeah, it did it ruined what was a very, very good performance, I think, from Andy Robertson.
Speaking of mistakes, one mistake from Alisson Becker allowed Heung Min-Son to equalise. He started having these one game in every 10 or so where he has a bit of a stinker. Shame for him today, letting that one slip through, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. He'd done so well. He'd saved Liverpool on countless occasions before that, so I don't really blame him, particularly in terms of, costing Liverpool the points or anything like that. I'm sure, he'll go away thinking, what if he could have just got that one right? I mean, yeah, it was one of those where it's an error. Ultimately, it is a mistake from him to let Son go round him and score. But yeah, like I say, there's so many other occasions where he'd say Liverpool, the one where Son squares it to Harry Kane, and I'm not quite sure how he hasn't scored. It's a brilliant save, isn't it? It's really, really good. I mean, the pass into Kane isn't the best, but to be able to spring up and get all the way across, and there was two or three like that. I mean, it's a performance, again, a little bit like Andy Robertson, where it's absolutely brilliant apart from one moment. And unfortunately, I think that the one moment is what everyone will go away thinking, what if Liverpool had have won this game and he hadn't have made that mistake, there'd be no doubt that he was man of the match. But ultimately, and unfortunately for him, that's the way it is when you're a goalkeeper. If you make an error, quite often it can be costly.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, for me, he still is definitely one of the best goalkeepers in the world, if not the best. But nothing that's the best in the world is our usual midfield, I think, at the moment, with Thiago, Fabinho, Henderson. None of those three starting today. We had young Tyler Morton playing in the 6. He struggled a lot today, Matt, didn't he?
Yeah, I thought on the ball he was excellent, actually, but off it, Liverpool just left him too exposed. And I know they don't have the options at the moment. Obviously, Thiago was COVID positive and couldn't play. Jordan Henderson was ill. Fabinho still isn't back after his suspected positive test. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but I just think you've got to be a little bit more sensible. For me, Tyler Morton's not a holding midfielder anyway. He's much better further forward. I think he's much better when you play him as an 8 and allow him to get forwards and score and assist and be decisive in that way. He's never really been a player which is going to snap into tackles. He's not particularly physical. He's not one of those players that is going to win the ball back and sniff out danger. So yeah, I just thought it was a little bit unfair on him, to be honest. That might seem like a sort of bold opinion to put forward from obviously a tactical perspective, but I just thought Liverpool were maybe not naive, but certainly just a little bit too bold. And James Milner was far too high up the pitch. I think Naby Keita was a little bit lethargic, didn't do a great deal in the game. And ultimately, when you've got two players next to Tyler Morton who are not really doing a great deal to help out defensively, it just leaves Liverpool exposed. And I think, a lot of people have been talking about kind of Konate and Matip, and I know Gary Neville mentioned it several times on commentary that they were missing Virgil van Dijk at the back. But I think even if you put Van Dijk in there with that midfield, that Tottenham with Son and with Kane, they were going to get in behind time and time again anyway. It was just a slightly strange kind of tactical setup. I thought it kind of played into their hands, and ultimately, if you give two players of Kane and Son's ability, particularly on the counter attack, I mean, it's just absolute stupidity really from Liverpool to leave themselves that exposed. So yeah, as much as it's frustrating, it would be fair to say that Tottenham only scoring 2 is probably a decent result for Liverpool.
Yeah, absolutely. Poor Tyler Morton, I don't think it was the right game for him. You can tell he's a good player, but having Milner and Keita alongside of it just wasn't a good combination, I think. Especially Naby Keita, I was quite surprised because he's had a very good season. But since his last injury, he's not quite looked as sharp coming back yet. I know he needs time, Matt, but he's not the same Naby we saw at the start of the season, is he?
No, it was a strange performance. I think he's one of those that is better when he's got better players around him and he's able to kind of play his own game without having to think too much. I think today there was a bit more of an onus on him to be defensively solid and to help out, but he just didn't quite do that, but didn't do his own game either. And he was kind of caught between doing the attacking role and the defensive one. It just wasn't quite there for him today. And look, he's been out for a little while. Maybe he's just not quite sharp enough. I think that there's a pretty good chance that his first game back would have first start would have been against Leicester midweek rather than in this one, had it not been for the circumstances. So look, it's a frustrating one for him. It's another game that's kind of gone by where you look at the fringe options for Liverpool in terms of the midfielders, and they maybe haven't stood out and taken that opportunity. It wasn't the best performance from him, but like you say, he's played a lot better earlier in the season, and hopefully, he can get himself a bit of consistency. And the more he gets on the pitch, the sort of closer he can get back to his best. Because we have seen at times this season there's a good footballer there, but I just don't think we saw that too often today.
Well, it had to end at some point. It was a shame to see Mohamed Salah's incredible run of goal contributions in the Premier League come to an end today, Matt. He had a pretty quiet game, didn't he?
Yeah, I thought Tottenham dealt with him quite well, actually. I think obviously Wolves did it, a week or so ago in terms of being able to shut him down. But he had that one moment against them where he was able to get himself in the box and set up, obviously, the winning goal. But yeah, I thought Tottenham did pretty well. It was interesting that Klopp moved him into a central position after an hour, puts Jota on the right-hand side and just sees how that goes. But again, it just didn't really make too much of a difference in terms of, giving him the space. I mean, he was involved in the Robertson goal. There was, claims for a handball in that one. But apart from that, there wasn't too many moments where he looked threatening for the Tottenham goal. So yeah, I think they'll be pretty pleased with how they dealt with him. But it was an off day for him. It was maybe an off day for Liverpool as a whole, but yeah, they've still got a point. They've still scored twice, and I suppose that just shows really the quality they've got. Even when they don't play well, they've still come away with something.
Well, exactly. A point at Tottenham way is by no means a bad result, but someone else had an off day and scored again. It's Diogo Jota. I was saying this in the previous game. Had a poor game, but still scored. It's a good run to have, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought he was okay actually today. I think he was slightly more involved certainly than Mohamed Salah, but I think again it's another example of him being able to head a ball brilliantly. I mean, just hanging in the air, putting it into the corner. It's really odd to see. I don't think he scored a headed goal for Wolves when he was there, but he scored several now for Liverpool. It's a real sort of strange attribute to have. He's not particularly tall, he's not particularly physical, but he just knows where to be, where to put himself in these positions. And yeah, the more he continues to do that, the better really for Liverpool. But yeah, again, it wasn't a perfect performance from him, but I think there was certainly players who probably performed worse across the 90 minutes for me.
Well, Liverpool unfortunately won't be top of the tree at Christmas, but it's a long old Christmas period and a long old season. There's plenty of time to go, and we're just 3 points off first place. That's all we've got time for now on the Debrief Live with myself, Patrick Smith, and Matt Addison. Thank you all very much for joining, and it's goodbye for now.